I call it striking the match. It's ironic how hard it is to find the person willing to strike the match, because you're setting fire and you got to control the fire.
Yeah.
That's actually, I like that analogy, actually. Yeah.
Welcome to the Small Nation Podcast, brought to you by CoverLink Insurance, where people are more important than policies. On this show, we unpack lessons from entrepreneurs, break down development strategies, and do deep dives on small town success. Our goal is to provide value to our listeners by hosting conversations that teach, inform, and inspire.
Thank you, Ethan. Hey, welcome to the show today, Jamon.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, we are doing a remote. This is actually our second remote in Urbana, Ohio. We are at a Urbana Brewing Company with Jamon Sellman. Jamon is the founder and CEO of Sellman Insurance Group, right?
Correct. Yep.
Sellman Insurance. And I'm today also joining on the podcast is Adam Rammel. He's our vice president of marketing at Small Nation, and then also owner of the Brew Fountain and the Syndicate. And if you go back in our library of episodes, Adam drops the real, raw, like number 3. Thank you, Nick. Nick's producing there.
Knows
in the back.
better than me.
Number 3, where he just shared his story of starting a craft beer bar in Bellefontaine, Ohio, when craft beer did not exist. Mm-hmm. And what's really awesome about being in our band today, like you'll hear, like right now in the background, you'll hear the hum of the brewing equipment. Like there's customers here, like they're enjoying a craft beer. And actually, for those of you on YouTube, we are drinking a delicious house-made. Yeah, take a sip of that. Mm-hmm. Tell us about this beer that we're drinking a little bit.
This is the cream ale that you've got.
The cream ale, yeah. And what do you guys have
I've
here?
got a Park Avenue IPA. It's a Centennial.
Cream ale over here.
Pretty
It's
good
the
stuff.
spot on a day like today.
But no, we're here on site because we wanted to connect with Jamon. Jamon's been a friend of ours at many years, and also someone that is inspiring us and other developers to take some big, bold moves. But probably growing up, did you have on your idea that you wanted to be a real estate developer and small town hero? Was that on your list growing up?
No, it was something that happened rather organically and slowly, to be honest. I started out of high school just knowing that I had a kind of an entrepreneurial knack when I started a little janitorial business, and it had sudden success. I spent a few years in corporate America and understanding hierarchies and how to get promoted within large corporations, and found that it was not a fit for me. I ended up starting in a business that actually sold on eBay.
Okay.
It was electronics that I would buy wholesale and sell retail, and grew that to a point where I had to either move it out of my home or it was going to drive us to insanity within the home. So I ended up moving on from some of those ventures, but I got small tastes of entrepreneurism as I was developing my business mind personally, because I was not raised with much exposure to business in general, and it was something I had to learn in adulthood.
In growing up, you were born in Canton,
Yes.
Ohio. Tell us about that journey from getting to Canton to now being here in Champaign County.
Yeah, I'll do a quick version. I was born in Canton, raised there until I was 13 years old. My family went on a mission, not a mission trip, but a mission move to South America, to Chile.
Wait, did you say
Wow.
South America?
Yes.
Not everyone kind of just jumps a family to South America. That's,
When I say Chile, people say, "Oh, Chillicothe." No.
yeah, or like
Chile.
Chili's the restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah,
the country.
and
That was an
and
experience?
My brother and sister actually married Chileans, and they are now living in the
Wow.
United States
Wow.
here too, Columbus, and actually my brother-in-law from Chile lives in Urbana with my sister. So, learned a culture, a language, a different way of life, a different perspective. I think all of those things are fringe, but they are important to kind of a personal development piece of understanding people and what people want, and how to be a servant, how to be a servant leader. All those things are things that kind of, if I didn't have the journey I did, I don't know what I would be doing, you know. But when we went to Chile, I came back when I was 16 and honestly spoke Spanish better than English at that part of my life. I would dream and pray and think in Spanish. And coming back to the States, we moved back to Indiana. My dad's job took us there. Fast forward a few years, I was married, and my first major job opportunity, corporate America, was to move to Cincinnati as a market leader for engineered wood product company. And then found that, that was just not my forever path, and found a way to become an entrepreneur through an industry that is tried and true, which is insurance. And
everyone needs insurance.
Yeah.
It's all the mistakes or all the storms or all the, it provides that sleep at night, right?
Yes, exactly. Peace of mind. We insure stupid.
It
was a stupid mistake.
There's a lot of stupid in the world.
We paid for it, and I've been a party to a few of those. But ultimately, it was an industry that I identified with because it is a servant position too, to be a consultant instead of a salesperson, and what I quickly learned is how little the consumer public understands about the insurance that they buy. And so I took that personally. Like, my customers, I will do everything in my power to make sure that when we sit down and we talk through a policy, I'm not just talking about insurance jargon. I'm making it real. What does this mean to you? In what scenarios does this pay out? And so the insurance journey for me was a method for entrepreneurism, because you are a business owner. Your agency, whether it grows or shrinks, is on you, and how you conduct yourself in your community, what type of people you employ, how well you train them, all of those aspects that are true to any industry became true to my own beginnings in true entrepreneurism. And then that's kind of what the segue was to real estate and other things. Yeah.
Well, we met in Urbana, Ohio, and I was trying to think driving up today. It probably is 10 years ago.
Yes.
You acquired a building here. I think had an agency also in Springfield, which is a neighboring town.
Yeah.
And what impressed me about Jamon is he took the first floor of an old department store and made it this beautiful insurance office, like painstakingly saving the hardwood floors, putting and restoring the tin ceiling, and making it a viable commercial business in the center of the square of Urbana, Ohio. And for people listening, Urbana, population-wise, 11,000 people in Champaign County.
40,000 in the total county.
It's considered rural, but it has been a destination for many years for education.
Yeah.
For many years, Urbana University was here. It was also a center for a lot of shopping. We had some great retailers and antique stores, and then food. Like restaurants were well respected and known here. And right at the time that you made that investment, the community also faced some headwinds. The university that had been here for many years decided to close down.
Yep. And,
it was as a time there weren't probably a lot of people standing in line saying, I want to invest in Urbana, Ohio.
That is exactly what happened. And when you become part of a community, I don't want to say you ignore those murmurings or thought processes, but there's something bigger that drives you. It's, what are we missing as a community, and what would it do for the community? What would it spur on of other growth within the community to do something that is kind of a larger catalyst to economic development? And those things drive you more than any negative commentary. Not that we ignore anything like that as entrepreneurs. You have to hear.
It's hard because you hear it a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah.
So you're putting your neck out on the line to buy and invest, and there are people that criticize, well, why are you putting that business in when you should be doing this? Or, why is there no parking, or you're not solving this issue? And everyone's kind of got their issues, right?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to have the magic one.
Or it won't work. You're not going to be successful.
Right. And those things, again, we don't ignore them, right? But the best way out is through. So that's always been my take and feel for business, is that with enough grit and enough tenacity and business plan. It's not all grit and tenacity. You have to have enough research done to know that your plan is going to work. But when you have all those things in place, it is a forward, go, hard scenario. And setbacks come in batches, it seems like. Your challenges come in
in waves.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it seems like they all hit in the same day, practically. And you take the blows and you get off the mat and you reconfigure and we could go deep into those details, but ultimately it's an attitude. It's a way that you approach business and your community that I think are the success ratios for entrepreneurs.
Love that. So from Sellman Insurance, and when you and I walked through, you renovated your first floor. We walked upstairs and you had an untouched second and third floor in this property. And you were kind of exploring different ways and things to do. I happened to walk by this property today, and now it's home to how many loft apartments?
9.
9 loft apartments in a situation where we have a housing crisis in our community. You've invested and created 9 loft apartments. Walk us through that. What were some of the collaborators and partners that helped make that project successful?
Well, first, let me rewind to your first visit and what you're referring to there. You inspired me. That was a major piece of this. And I don't know if you remember, I think prior to your visit here, I visited you. And we walked through a bunch of your buildings, and I saw firsthand what you were accomplishing. That was my spark. Seeing somebody else, similar, we're close in age, and I keep telling people I still would love to be you when I grow up.
Feelings are mutual. We're learning together on this one.
But so to rewind to that is important to me because that was my spark. I walked your buildings and saw your passion and what you were able to pull off. And so when I walked this building, and I don't think I actually even bought it yet when you and I walked it. I was in close to closing. It was all ideas then. There was no blueprints. There was just a lot of ideas floating around. And so we were talking about, does it look like art studios? Does it look like residential? How do we make this thing work? And this building was very rough. It needed nearly everything you could imagine. Concrete in for the windows. There were no existing windows. It was a dark space. And so the amount of vision it required to even get optimistic about it was tremendous. But as that process kept going, and it's funny because that's, I think, part of creativity is it does not come all in one wave. You explore something, you chip away at an idea. Sometimes you redirect because that idea was no good, and then you have to start over.
Yep.
And then you reapproach and you go again at it and from a different angle, and you bring in other people that have experience that give you new ideas. And when I walked it with my now architect, Sarah Mackert, her ideas and the collaborative part of entrepreneurism is, I have to say, the number one lure to doing it.
I've actually heard those similar words come out of Adam's mouth. How have you thought about that in your entrepreneurial journey as you've introduced new menus, new restaurant concepts?
Yeah, I think when you start out, you think you can do it all, and you're small. You're just getting started, and then you find other rock star entrepreneurs that may be darn good architects or designers or chefs or cooks or whatever it may be. And you grow the business that way, and you realize that when you can focus on what you do best and they can focus on what they do best, magic can happen.
Yes.
And that's a theme I'm hearing from a lot of different guests, even on the podcast, is just getting around. There's value in just getting around people who are making things happen, whether that's specific in the restaurant industry or, the brewing space or whatever, or real estate. I have a friend who's trying to get something going in real estate for himself, and he goes to real estate meetups not just to learn. He knows a lot of the stuff they're covering, but he just needs that energy from other people. So if to our listeners, if you're just looking to get started somewhere and you have an idea, start putting yourself in position around other people who are doing things, anything.
Yes, I could not agree more. And one little tidbit to that is I've always felt strong about this, and there could be controversy in it, but if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm bored.
Yeah.
I want to surround myself by people that know more, especially in aspects of things that I'm less experienced with. That's where I'm thriving, is open ears, open dialogue, open-ended questions, where you're able to capitalize on everyone else's passion and experience beyond what you can even hold within yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So walk us through the Loft project, and you use some unique programs. A lot of our guests, we've had other real estate investors, they've talked a little bit about historic tax credits. They've talked a bit about programs like Jobs Ohio's Vibrant Community Grant Program, but you've actually applied for those and been able to successfully use those in a small town. Can you kind of walk us through, after you acquired the building, what you engaged to start utilizing some of those funding sources in your capital stack?
Yeah, I would say that the learning curve at first glance is intimidating, because when you go onto these websites and you're surfing them at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday because you're an entrepreneur and that's what you're doing.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, I open up a bottle of wine and then I start doing it.
I'm in my underwear. I'm not in my underwear. Who knows?
That's right.
But the point is, you're always going, right, and you're finding things, information chains that can become rabbit holes, and they can be intimidating, and they can exhaust your mental and emotional energy.
Yeah.
So I found early on, and I will advocate for this in any conversation I'm ever having, consultants that are qualified in their space are well worth their fees, within reason, right? And I found one in the historic tax credit space. It is a much larger learning curve to me than what Vibrant Communities was. And in that space, because you're dealing with both the state government and the federal government, there's just so much to learn to satisfy both entities, that a historic tax credit consultant was the key. He laid things out in simple terms for me and helped with all the applications and all the write-ups, all the things that the state needs and wants to see to be able to approve your project. So when you're having little bottlenecks of, what do I do here? Can I put lighting here? Can I put a trunk line of a HVAC line here or that? Or whatever it is that your question is of how to interpret their codes of historic tax credits, you have a quick line of communication. You're not waiting on an 800 number or somebody from a governmental agency to call you back.
Or spinning your wheels trying to figure it out yourself.
Exactly. So that would be my number one, is finding someone suitable to be your partner in that, an advocate. And he launched me into success in that program with the Urbana Loft project, for sure.
Can you walk us through that capital stack of acquisition price, renovation budget, and then some of those tax credits?
Isn't it funny how weird numbers stick in your head 8 years later? I bought the building for $103,000.
Which to people hearing that, it's a big building.
It is. It's I got to think about this now. 28,000 square feet, something like that. And we're sitting in part of that.
Okay.
This wing is non-historic, what now is the brewery, but it was part of that acquisition. And this was extremely rough when I bought it. Roof was leaking. Nothing here looks like what it did then. So the $103,000 was my acquisition. Then going through my office space, I did not request any grants. I was not involved in anything like that at that point. I was not honestly aware of much available to me. And that acquisition or that renovation cost me roughly $80,000, maybe $90,000 to do. But all in, from the perspective of owning a office space for that kind of entry point, and to have something to be proud of, it was not a bad thing. And I had kind of like a back of my mind, okay, eventually I'll probably do the lofts above, because I was passionate from the beginning. I just didn't have all the tools. Then quickly, I started learning more and more about the historic tax credits. Sarah Mackert helped me so much in the vision, in having somebody else that got excited with me, because it's a passion game. If you don't have passion, I don't know that you survive all the trouble points. So that was the next stage, is getting a good partner for actually making it real, putting it on blueprints. And then through that process, of course, you have to have a certain level of blueprinting to get approval through the historic tax credit. So that's part of it. You have to be through some blueprinting to submit your application. Once that happened and I was approved, it was all about connecting with local contractors, subcontractors, and getting the labor force taken care of. And there's about 30 scopes of work in an old building
just
like
pause
this.
on that.
Yeah.
30 different scopes, contractors, people that you have to coordinate, or someone has to coordinate to take what is on the drawings and actually make it a reality.
Yeah. And bold, I am. Smart, I am not always. And the guy that did it was me. I was like, I don't know how to hire a GC that I can relay everything that I've already gone through quick enough to make this thing just happen. So I'm just going to do it.
Sounds reasonable.
How was that learned?
A year of your life, right?
Oh, 2
2 years of your life.
2
yeah.
years of my life.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I will not do that again. I will not be the front runner that's boots on the ground and handling everybody's problems every day. Every guy that doesn't show up, every product that's short.
It's the pings and dings.
Yes.
And it's a lot.
The death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
No death. No
Look
death.
how much smarter you are though now, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm just doing it. I'm doing it again, but I'm doing it differently. And I think that's part of entrepreneurism, is you make bold moves, and some of them are painful. But the only way to get better is to reevaluate your methods and maybe tweak those. I don't want to stop doing. I just want to do different.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the acquisition price. Walk us through the capital stack.
Okay, so lending was a part of it. Getting a good bank lender that was not over the top on the underwriting process. They have to have vision to have an as completed appraiser to understand, and you have to have enough blueprinting at that stage as well to be able to show an appraiser what this thing is going to be when it's done, right? So that was, I partnered with People's Bank here in town, and they were absolutely awesome. You get monthly draws, basically, to be able to pay all your subcontractors. I started with a kind of a slush fund to pay my contractors through the month, and then I just basically reimbursed my own slush fund to be able to stay fluid and fast paying. And that's what kept small contractors' attention. And you probably know well, when you're slow pay, they find other ways to get paid quicker.
Yeah. Right.
So I learned that very quick, and I came from the contracting world, so I understood that to be the truth. And so the faster you pay and you keep those guys current, they're coming back week over week. And there are still exceptions that you have to deal with, but that was a portion of it. But ultimately, my budget on that project, I came in at $1.242 million was my budget coming in. Said and done, I'm about 146. So I'm a little over 200,000.
Which, if you hear most projects, and you kind of took that through COVID,
yes,
lots of challenges, that's actually pretty good.
Yes.
And a lot of people that are listening, if you're not building that contingency in
Absolutely.
for all the unintended things that you thought you should have known,
Yeah.
you need to build that higher, right?
Yeah.
Adam's shaking his head.
The syndicate, we learned a lot about that.
Which, building a brand new building that's attached to a historic building and going through delays with getting utilities set, going through needing to upgrade HVAC because the amount of people there, and there's all these things that when it was on paper, and then when you translate it to what the code officials want or the inspections that happen, there's these unintended expenses that pop up.
Yeah, right.
So with your project, just closing this out on the capital stack, you got your bank financing. You also got and qualified for some historic tax credits.
Yes. And when I did it 2 years ago, there was a percentage ask to spend. So you think you're going to spend, I thought I was going to spend 1.242. And I asked for a smaller percentage to raise my point value. So it's literally a teeter-totter of the more you ask for, the lower your points are, and you fall down the pole of what gets awarded. So that was the sensitivity of how I built what I asked for. So I don't know, you never know what you could have asked for and gotten, but I got $211,000 was granted by the state of Ohio, and I am weeks away from filing that last part 3 to be able to collect that.
And the project is now done. We're actually in the brewery here doing the podcast today. The lofts, and what is the loft project's called?
Urbana Lofts.
Urbana
we
Lofts.
Got creative.
Yeah, look at that. Well,
Urbana Brewing.
Google knows.
Keep it simple.
You know, and there's something. Tell us about that. There's something to be said about keeping the name simple. We were talking about that earlier, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Why is that
Totally
important, Adam?
You know, I think that people need to be able to resonate with something and tell their friends how to pronounce something or feel confident in saying it. Let's go to the brew. They shorten Brew Fountain a lot.
Yeah.
You know, we find that. So now when we're thinking about naming things, we definitely keep that in mind because we've learned.
Yeah, stay
And
simple.
And it's finding ways to work smarter, not harder. Right?
Well, and I think, too, with the power of Google and social media today, you want to be able to jump on your phone and find it.
And if you're looking for a brewery in Urbana, guess what's going to pop up?
Urbana Brewing Company with a great pre-nail.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. So now, I mean, you just, thanks for doing the breakdown of that deal, but now you're operating this business. How's this business going for you? Like now that you've done it and you're starting to implement those things, like how's that process been for you?
Very good. Now, ask me 9 months ago, and it was still some big question marks because everything takes longer than you project. I heard this from a very experienced GC, and he says, create a budget, create a timeline, and double both.
That's actually pretty wise.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that may be slightly exaggerated, but still it illustrates the point. We were, maybe 4 months beyond what we thought we would be. And in business, time is money. When you're lending or borrowing and you've got overhead that just continually grows. And of course, the build out of this ended up being more expensive than we thought it would be.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Shocker.
And it took longer to get open. Part of that was the liquor commission being very slow and hard to work with, honestly. We were learning. We were brand new at that side of things, and you have a lot more experience there. But getting to a point of being open and then seeing the community's reaction, that's the filler. That's where I've literally sat in the corner of this place. I've sat in the back alone and just watched people because that's why I did it. That's why we did it. Jason Kyle is a partner in this, and we had this conversation so many times. We need a place where the community relies on to come together, and an open forum like a what they call a beer hall, right? If you look around here, it's all wide open. When you walk in the door, you can see nearly everyone that's here. And there's something really cool about that, that you catch up with people you didn't see before, right?
Yeah.
And that's the filler. That's the why. And we came together with the business plan, and it worked, and now we are finally profitable. 2022 we weren't because we just opened and we had all the expenditures to get open. But in 23, we're going to show profit, which is a beautiful thing.
Right. Which is not that
this.
common in startup businesses.
Especially in the first 5 years. And a lot of the communities that we talk with, one of the things that they want to recruit or start is a brewery. Yeah. And hearing that, you mentioned Jason Kyle, and I know you've got another partner in the business as well.
Yes, Neil Pence, and that happened very organically. So when Jason Kyle and I put this all together, we started the blueprinting, we identified this space. We still didn't have a master brewer. We were, we work organically, and we feel like things happen for a reason. Yeah. And sure enough, through...
He showed up on your doorstep.
No, he got introduced to us through a friend of a friend type scenario. And the first meeting, I mean, it's when it works, it works. When it doesn't work, it doesn't work. and right away. And Neil Pence has been from day one to today an advocate. He understands business in general. He understands our community. He knows beer front and back, and he's a hard worker. He's an engineer by trade, so he understands the chemistry, the molecular level of everything that he's doing that is beyond me or my pay grade. Mm-hmm. And so it came together beautifully, and he wanted to buy in. So he is a partner in this brewery. So the way it started to where it is now, it's a little different than it started, but for the better. We have a invested, qualified partner now in part of what we produce as a product.
And it's something about you're getting everyone around. Like I can resonate with what you said about sitting in the corner, because I remember sitting at Brew Fountain, not at the bar, but like in one of the seats and just experiencing it from like a patron or a customer, right? And it's what energy is brought from that experience. So as we drive into town today on 68 and see all this other activity, it kind of started with this brewery in this space, right?
Yeah, it really has.
And it takes that catalyst. And I think for someone listening to answer that question is, how do you get the first beginnings of a brewery in your town? You had to acquire real estate and get control of a property, even if the property was in really rough shape. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like the second step is you sought out a business partner. So you mentioned Jason Kyle. He and his wife are dentists and own dental businesses in the community.
Yeah,
right?
she is the dentist, but he is the business manager, and they have a substantial practice. So that is a full-time position for him as well.
All right, at this time, we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. If you are looking for a dynamic workspace in the heart of Bell Fountain, look no further. Build Co-working Space is your destination for creativity and collaboration. With state-of-the-art facilities and a thriving community, this is where innovation happens. Join them today for as low as $99 a month and build your success at Build Co-working Space. Brew Fountain is voted best beer bar in Ohio. Come visit their award-winning team in downtown Bell Fountain for fresh, local craft beer, soups, salads, sandwiches, wine on tap, and handcrafted cocktails. And they're always available to cater your next event with their boxed lunches and platters. Cheers to Small Nation.
And both of you then had to find someone that wanted to make the beer and make good beer, right? There's a lot of breweries that don't have great beer. Like, it is a thing. But, like, once you figured out that and made the decisions to hold hands and jump in, that got this momentum going here.
Yeah.
Anything else, like advice-wise, any things we're missing in those steps?
So I guess speaking to I call it striking the match. It's ironic how hard it is to find the person willing to strike the match, because you're setting fire and you got to control the fire.
Yeah.
That's actually I like that analogy, actually. Yeah, it's true.
So, it's good. It can be really great, or it can be really bad if it's not done appropriately. And part of my confidence in going into it was my partner. Jason Kyle and I have such incredibly aligned vision. And then when Neil Pence was introducing the whole thing, and he's right in with us, it was so easy to make what I feel like are still today good decisions on how we've hired, how we've built out the space, how we've handled things that are not 100% positive at times. Being willing to strike the match is a little intimidating, because you know that you have some weight on your shoulders, because if you don't do it right, and Urbana's opening a brewery, and then 6 months later, the brewery didn't open, it failed. Yeah. There's nothing worse for economic development than something like that. So you have to have enough qualified partners and financial backing as well.
It takes real money.
It really does.
Do you have a money tree? Is that how this all works?
Yeah, I water it in the morning, and I come back and it just pluck it.
Let me ask you this. So you're working with a couple of different partners, and I know a lot of our listeners have appreciated when we talk about partnerships on the podcast. So what are some of those things that you do to ensure that your partnerships stay healthy?
Ooh, good question. Communication. I don't know that anything is more important than that. And in the greatest moments of adversity or any type of negativity, which honestly we've not had a lot of.
That's good.
Picking the right team is number one.
Yeah. And
then keeping that team working together and cohesive, communication. I am a very big believer in the right communication, and that everyone is being honest in their communication, even if it's not pretty what they have to say, they're going to say it respectably. And we have weekly meetings. So we just had one this morning. And every party has a voice, and they express what it is that they're looking to do, or what what their perspective is, and we make consensus decisions.
Yeah.
And your brewer is running the day-to-day operations here then, or how does that look?
No. So we have a general manager.
You have a general manager.
He runs the day-to-day operations, and we're introducing an assistant general manager so that we always have someone of authority on staff during higher
So this
peak
was
hours.
your first venture in food and beverage.
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing you've learned? I'm just excited for
Run.
this answer.
No. Okay. So, there's a lot of warnings in place regarding food and beverage, and there's a lot more challenges, I think, in this industry than in many others that are more tried and true, like what I've done with insurance. It's more predictable. Like I can build performas for 5 years with my insurance agency. Here, I got to do them by like 6 months, because we don't know what market conditions are going to change consumer habits and spending, disposable income, hyperinflation. All these things are factors in how people spend their money and on what they spend their money.
Yeah, and what they like anymore.
Exactly.
I like seltzers. I like
Yeah.
IPAs.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Pilsners.
Right. It's always
Yeah,
evolving.
It's evolving.
Yeah, and you have to stay current on that. Forgive me if I just got off track.
Any advice that you have about food and beverage? What you've learned?
Hear your community. We've done our best to put a lot of feelers out by way of social media inquiry. What do you want to see? What's the next beer that we should produce?
Yeah, everybody has an opinion, right?
Yeah, exactly. And now you have to filter.
Right.
You get some funny ones, and when they come, you have to take them with a grain of salt. At times, there's those that prefer negativity to productivity. But when you get a group of 100 replies, you can quickly sift for the most qualified and the dominant requests for specific food or drink items or environmental changes or whatever it is that they're asking for. So, yeah, hearing our community, and while we were in development stage, we were doing that constantly too, because the community was behind it. They were watching. We had a little sign on the door that had a little
peek in, right?
Yeah,
I was peeking in. So
yeah. In the shape of a fermenter. You can peek in and take a look at what the progress was. But during that phase, we kept asking people, like, what do you want? What would you like to see? Gaming? Do you want to see upstairs open air? Cornhole.
You have a rooftop patio here, and that's one of the things that. Did that come out of feedback, or how did that come about?
Okay, so that was really Jason and I having a very strong feeling towards the lack of the amenity in our county.
Yeah.
We don't know of any other rooftop decks. And when we saw the opportunity that this is a steel-framed building, right? And all we had to do is, if you can see it from the camera angle, is this I-beam, rather substantial, oversized in my opinion from my engineering background.
Looks good.
But ultimately, that is what allowed us to be able to do the rooftop deck. And that was a passion part of it. We just kind of bowled into that one. We didn't ask a lot of questions. We just publicized that was our business plan. And the feedback matched our passion.
Yeah.
Is, wow, we have a rooftop deck now in Urbana.
Yeah.
We overlook the square. We can drink a beer up there. We got a bar up there. That was the vision.
Suddenly you have something to do in Urbana, which is awesome.
And we're embarking on a mural.
There you go.
Now with another building adjacent to it.
Yeah.
And so that'll be kind of an environmental ad as well.
For sure. Yep. So I know from our conversation before that this is not the only real estate you own. So maybe just quickly touch on what other kinds of real estate. You don't have to get too specific, but just like what other real estate things you got going on.
I started in just simple residential. My first building I ever bought was the duplex I moved into. I lived in one side. I was newly married, broke.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. We're going to do our show segment, Deep Plunge for Real Estate, or whatever it's called. So your first ever property, I'm trying to get really practical for our listeners here. Tell us how did you make it happen from the very beginning?
Small. I started small. I started humble. I started thinking in small terms. And what you do by learning how money flows in an investment property is you can apply the same logic to larger and larger and larger pieces of money and pieces of property. And in the residential segment, I was able to continue to apply that over and over and over and over. So what I found was if by snowballing what earnings were coming out of something. So someone that has a full-time job that sustains them, right? That you have your necessities met. Mm-hmm. If you can put together enough to start that snowball, as small as the snowball can be, and if you can flick it down the hill, it will build, obviously with some care. So the first one was a duplex. I got a feel for how money flows through it, and I was able to buy property after property, and I got up to, I think, 60 doors at one point. And a lot of those were actually single family, doubles, triples, quads. Ended up getting a 16-unit apartment complex. Through that process, I always did my best to never touch that snowball. So even if I was having a profitable year, I would take the profits and say, okay, it's time to acquire.
Yep.
And that snowball grows 10 times faster when you're not touching it.
Yeah.
So that was my ideology, is I had something stable that paid my bills. I was not struggling without taking income from the real estate. And that is how it grew as fast as it did. In my terms, it grew fast. I'm sure there are others that built way faster than I do and had better plans than I do.
Yeah.
But I used very organic money to grow, is keep it in there, flip it over, buy another one, build it up, buy another one.
Yep.
And that did serve me. I was able to buy a lot of those properties in times when real estate values are very low.
Yeah. And just residential, or what made you get into the commercial side of things?
That was also rather organic. I insured a property from a good friend that owned the buildings that Sutphin Corporation operates out of. They build fire trucks. And so I knew the buildings, right? I had walked them for insurance purposes of how suitable these buildings are, the quality of the roofs, the fire suppression systems, and so on, electric, all of it. So I knew the buildings, and then they came to me one day and said, we're going to sell them. And it did not register at first that I would even consider industrial buildings. I had no experience.
Yeah.
So it literally spent zero energy in my brain for a period of time, but I drove by that building daily on my way home.
Makes you think, huh?
Yeah, and so and literally one day I'm driving by and I'm like, should I venture into industrial? And the neat thing was I have friends, right? And they're telling me, as soon as I sat down with them and started asking about the financials and understanding how money flows through industrial versus residential, is you cut your tenant base way down and your dollars are the same. So there's managing relationships is way less when you jump into these arenas. Now your rent checks are 6, 8, 10, 15 times the size of an apartment.
Yeah.
So that is great. It's like anything. There's an inverse problem that we can generate.
Yeah, side effect from it.
Exactly. If that person starts defaulting, you have a much larger problem on your hands.
Yeah.
Right.
So you want to be very solvent and cash strong and build cash to be able to handle those kind of bad times. I'm very fortunate that Sutphin Corporation is a group of outstanding human beings and professionals that have never toyed with the idea of not paying their rent.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And since they're building a new building and starting to exit that building, I'm learning now how to fill industrial space.
Yep.
I've never had to do that.
Yeah.
So how to attract a new tenant? What level of electricity do I have? How many docks do I have? How many bays? What size they are? What's the total clearance? How many offices, restrooms? You learn all the things that make industrial consumer base tick and what makes them make decisions. It's also logistics. How close are you to highways?
Yeah.
And where are they from? And what product are they moving where? And ultimately, like everything else I've done, it's a learning curve.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's learn 90% of what you need to know to make 100% confident decision.
It's true. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Well, and as we think about Urbana and what's next, I mean, coming in today, I mentioned seeing several buildings of yours that there were construction crews that were working. But what's even cooler, there were a lot of buildings of other people in town that are following your lead and renovating their properties too.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about some of the things on the horizon, new projects that you're working on?
Yeah, I don't know what would have happened with or without what I did. So it's hard to actually say that what's a catalyst to what, but there's definitely energy down here that did not exist before. One of which is a building right across the way on North Main. Brett Spriggs took that on. I think it's a beautiful building and what it can be, but it's a challenge. He's got some structural challenges there that he's getting good guidance. He has good teammates in how to get through that. But seeing that one being taken on, Justin Weller bought the corner building and has improved that tremendously.
What paint can do.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
those of you that have not visually seen this, Justin and his team with Urbana tomorrow really repainted what was kind of a building that you just drive by. It was kind of a taupe color.
Yeah.
Now it's this very vibrant blue and white,
Yes.
and it is obviously energetic on the square.
Absolutely. And that is another catalyst. Like seeing that kind of improvement. He put all new windows in it too. So the functionality of it, the appeal of it is now brand new. And he's also doing some things that he and I have had conversation on, and I believe in intrinsically. Lower levels really need to be retail. Office space on lower levels, and I keep saying this, but I'm an office on the lower level, so one day I will kick myself out.
Yeah.
But until then, that is a very economically stimulating thing to have all your lower levels being retail space.
Yeah.
And he did that well.
That's awesome.
And then pivoting across the street, do you want to talk a little bit about the furniture store project and what's kind of up that you're working on with there?
Yeah, that one happened again. All this stuff is organic, right? Like I got a phone call from a good friend, Rich Ebert at CEP, Economic Partnership, Champaign Economic Partnership. And he said, hey, there's this building coming open. It was the owner, unfortunately, was dealing with some health complications and not able to find another furniture company to fill or to purchase the store. And so he was going to be closing the store. And then I met with that prior owner and walked through the building. And the same thing happened to me as when I walked through this one. It's just the ideas start rolling and you can see spaces being renovated and the beauty of these old buildings again. And so sure enough, he knew I was the right guy to call apparently, because I'm going, yeah, let's do this. And so I started building the plan around it. We came to an agreement of a fair acquisition price for the building, and then started blueprinting right away. And we started the grants process, which I'm sure we'll probably discuss.
Yeah, well, and just highlighting that, grants, a lot of people think that they're just easy to get, plenty of them out there. Is that true?
Not even close. There's a perception that, you can just go get free money.
Yeah.
There is a tremendous process, and the amount of hours, emails, forms, applications, and just flat out understanding what they're looking for to be able to be approved. That learning curve is months long. You don't just go, hey, I'm going to do something really neat. I need a lot of money. Here it is. There's nothing even close to that process. So you're learning how to fill out their applications. You have to have enough due diligence done to be able to have accurate information to fill the application to be desirable to the grant. So that process looks a lot like blueprinting. Getting enough built to understand so that you can relay what it is that you're trying to do. So historic tax credits was the first thing, because I already had that experience with the Urbana Lofts. We were able to separate the project. This is a little nuance that I learned, is that in the last 2 rounds and they have 2 rounds per year. This was round 30 I applied for. In the last 2 rounds, 28 and 29, every small category got granted.
Because there's probably not a lot of people applying, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah, and that's something we want to change.
Yeah.
I think the burden is so high for those small projects, small town developers,
Yeah.
that a lot of people don't do what you have done.
Yeah.
And How did you overcome that? You mentioned professionals and consultants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I used the same consultant because he was so good at the first one. I engaged him again. And he strategized the best way to go about it was to split it in 2 applications. So we have 2 small grants, which the benefit was that you can ask for up to $299,000 per. So we were able to ask for $498,000 by having 2 applications. So that's what we did. And sure enough, his advice held true and we were granted.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a big piece of it. And then, of course, the federal tax credits are after the whole thing is complete, and that is against taxes owed in the 5 years following. 20% per year is how those are collected. So it's a very different thing. The Ohio State, or the state of Ohio historic tax credit is a check in the mail. The year after the building goes into service, the year after when you file your taxes, then you get that check in the mail.
That every dollar counts, and
yes.
it matters. So the other thing is we hosted Bob Smith, the chairman of the Jobs Ohio board, on the podcast. And one of the things that Bob was really excited to work with Jobs Ohio to introduce about 2 years ago was the Vibrant Community Grant Program.
Yeah.
And you just got some great news, I think about 6 months ago, that your project, the furniture store building, was awarded $800,000 in Vibrant Community Grant funding. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I know we're kind of rounding the end of the segment, but any advice about how you were successful in working with your other community partners, of course, your local chamber, regional economic development association, to actually get that grant?
Working closely and humbly with people that are there to help you.
That's huge.
You cannot go into these being a ramrod, telling them how it's going to be. I've always taken the path of teach me. What do I need to know to qualify for this? When you're in the beauty of the building stage is it's flexible. You can actually make moves because nothing's been built yet. So all you have is a plan, and you can modify that plan to appropriate their requests. And so that was kind of the angle with that, is we found an advocate in Julie Sullivan and Sarah Spies at the Dayton Development Coalition, yeah. DDC. And the excitement that they had matched ours.
Love that.
And that was the best part of going through that grant, is it didn't feel like you're dealing with, curmudgeons that are just like, oh, I got to show up to work. They were excited about our town. They came to visit. They came to see the building before we even put an official application in.
Wow.
That was the level of commitment they had. And so you build that, and every conversation is a heck of a lot easier when you're all on the same team and you're asking, what do I do? How do I show this to be the most appealing to the committee? And when you build things that way, and you approach it with a sense of humility, the success ratios are massively swung.
How much ongoing maintenance and paperwork and things is there ongoing?
Well, we'll find out.
Great answer. At least what we've heard, you mentioned that the heavy lift you've already done with the state and federal historic tax credits.
That is the much harder platform, yes.
Jobs Ohio, at least from what we've heard with other developers, and we've had some on the show that have used that program, that being a public-private partnership, they have a lot of flexibility and more tools. Thank you to both of you for funding Jobs Ohio. Cheers, because it's actually funded with our liquor license fees.
Yeah.
But we really are been sharing through our newsletter and other examples like yours about how valuable that program is, how unique it is compared to most of those that are out there.
I do probably want to add something that was very important to our application process, is that when we learned what their criteria was, the co-work space, it was kind of like, what can I do here? Well, co-work space. How about anything else? Well, co-work space. They were very, very determined.
And I will share in some early Zooms as they were constructing this program, we had a chance to really help shape that legislation. So big shout out to Christy Tanner and the folks there, because what we recognized is that small towns were lacking that type of co-working facility. And then when COVID hit, it's like diesel fuel was poured on that fire, and it grew it even more. So I'm just excited that is being brought, and you're working with Sarah. She's going to be your operator for the co-working brand.
Yes, Sarah Mackert. Yeah.
Sarah Mackert, and seeing those kind of amenities, because those people that come and work here are going to spend money in the restaurants, they're going to shop, and they're going to add to that whole goal of creating a vibrant downtown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It all plays into the same goal. Yep.
That's awesome.
Do we have a brand yet for the co-working space?
Will work.
Ooh, will work.
So Willman Building.
Oh, I like that.
Will
Actually,
work.
that's
Nice.
great.
A little bit more creative name there than the other ones.
I love that.
And
That's
I didn't even
Not
come up with it.
Urbana
I would have called it
Co-working?
Urbana
Yeah.
Co-working. No, that was all Sarah and
That's
Chad
awesome.
Mackert coming up with that one.
Nice.
They've been the catalyst to that entire part of this whole thing.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. Jamon, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We got to kind of wrap up the episode here. But what I love about your story is that you're an entrepreneur. You started that in different ways, with the insurance route and then starting your own businesses. But then you're an entrepreneur turned developer. You just start doing one project after another and just multiple things keep opening up. And you're building energy and getting around the right people, and people are noticing, and they're taking that energy and putting it into their own projects, which, like we keep saying, just spurring on economic development. So just wanted to highlight you here on the podcast and appreciate the work that you're doing here in Urbana. But I always ask this at the end of our episodes, but what is one professional development resource that was impactful for you on your journey as you're learning how to do all this? Could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be a mentor, it could really be anything that helped you learn.
Mentors. I'm, as much as I would say I read a lot, I force myself to read. It's not something I enjoy necessarily unless it's something that really grabs me.
Yeah.
I'll sit down and read a whole book in a few hours if it's something that grabs me. But otherwise, reading to read is not my thing. Mentors have always spoken to me. I'm very people person, right? And so when I identify with someone, I've had several mentors in this area that have Todd Woodruff, Terry Howell, Todd Michael. These are gentlemen that have done business in this county, but with moral ground. They're progressive thinkers. They put people first, but they're businessmen and they understand how business works. And by seeing that, you can do all these things and keep a moral sense about you and build things around yourself that really everybody's winning, that spoke deeply to me to see it firsthand. And then it just, you have enough conversations over enough beers.
That's awesome.
And that's what it does.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. And then last question I have for you is, where can people follow you and your businesses to keep up with what's happening with your work?
Really, social media is our platform these days. Facebook is the business platform that we probably use the most, and Instagram. UBC, Urbana Brewing Co., we announce everything. We take polls, all of that through social media. My insurance agency, Sellman Insurance Group, is we also have a platform on Facebook and Instagram.
Cool.
And that's how we announce things, Employee of the Month and things that are happening in that. But yeah, it's probably the best way.
Cool. I'll link some of those in the show notes. But Jason, you have a kind of a recap here for us?
Jamon, thank you. It's an honor to be living and enjoying and seeing your vision play out here in Urbana and how that's inspiring so many other good things happening here. I'm excited to continue to shop and eat and explore everything that Urbana has to offer, and just really impressed with you. So
and
thanks
see
for
what's next.
Yeah, see what's next. So,
right. The honor is mine. Thank
Yeah.
you. You guys have inspired me. And when you asked, it was not even a thought process. It was, yes, let's do this.
Awesome.
I enjoy the camaraderie and the like-mindedness and professionalism that you guys exert.
Feelings are mutual, brother.
And the pizza smells good. So.
That's what we got to do next.
I love that.
There you go. Thanks for tuning in on this episode of the Small Nation Podcast. We hope that conversation proved valuable to you. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share the episode and follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting platform. You can also subscribe to the Small Nation YouTube channel if you prefer to watch your episodes. Follow Small Nation on social media, and we'll see you in the next episode.